time. And so I'll pass this on to the presenters, Dr. Sandra Butvilofsky, Deena, Gumina, and Maestra Michelle Lopez. And if you can all be muted at this point, and you can use the chat for questions, and we'll try to build in time at the end of the presentation.
Buenos dias, good morning, welcome, and thank you for coming and selecting this session. Really, the star of the presentation is Miss Michelle Lopez, and what we did is we pre-recorded our presentation because Dr. Khanh Nguyen Lê could not be with us this morning, and so what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and play the video for you, and then we have some times where there are pauses and questions, so you can either chat in the chat session, or when we come back together after the 40-minute presentation, what we really want to do is engage in breakout rooms and dialogue with one another. So with no further ado, I'm going to share my screen and the video, and I hope in the chat you'll let me know if it doesn't work. Welcome to our session titled Project Recuerdo, a critical and culturally sustaining bilingual family journal project. My name is Sandra Butvilofsky. I am currently an associate professor at the University of Texas at El Paso. My co-presenters are Ms. Michelle Lopez, a bilingual educator in Denver who created and implements this bilingual family journal project in her classroom, Dr. Khanh Nguyen Lê, professor at Regis University, who was instrumental in carrying this project out as well. She has a lot of expertise in family engagement. And Dr. Deena Gumina, a bilingual education expert and currently director at the Bueno Center. In this session, we will describe Project Recuerdo, which is a critical and culturally sustaining family journal project. This family engagement project draws upon familial and experiential knowledge through storytelling and journal writing, and then brings that knowledge into the classroom and school through curricular connections. The knowledge elicited validates Latino communities and is a practical application of the enactment of culturally sustaining pedagogy and critical race theory. Let me provide you with an overview to our session. We will begin with the theoretical framing and empirical evidence that supports family engagement, provide the rationale for and description of Project Recuerdo, share research related to this project, and provide an opportunity for you to reflect upon ways you can engage families through storytelling and journal writing with other participants in the session. And finally, we will have time for questions and dialogue about this work. I would like to acknowledge that this work was funded and supported through a federal grant through the Bueno Center at CU Boulder and in partnership with Denver Public Schools. The work we present here aims to disrupt and challenge deficit-based paradigms of parent engagement. As Yoso expresses, one of the most prevalent forms of contemporary racism in US schools is deficit thinking. Traditional forms of parent involvement view parents or families from minoritized communities as problems to fix, and thus schools impose white middle-class norms to teach families how to be involved in schools. Using critical race theory and culturally sustaining pedagogies, the aim of family engagement is to disrupt oppressive structures and center the knowledge and cultural wealth of minoritized families and bring that knowledge into the school.
So how does changing the term parent involvement to family engagement impact how we view families and school partnerships? These two terms are often used interchangeably, but they have very big differences in their meaning. Next, Dr. Sandra. So the definition for family engagement and parent involvement, here are the differences. Acknowledging the changing nature of homes that may or may not include parents is family engagement, whereas parent involvement does not acknowledge the changing dynamics of families. Not all families have parents. Family engagement, acknowledging the contribution of individual beyond parents, such as grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings. And this is huge for our CLD families because oftentimes our students have extended families that live with them, that get them ready for school, that sees them after school is a big part of their life. And that is huge for the engagement piece. Whereas parent involvement does not acknowledge the contribution of other significant individuals beyond the parent in the child's life. So engage is a word that means to come together and interlock, thus implying doing with, whereas involvement is to enfold or envelop, thus implying doing to. So thinking about these two definitions, what definition fits your school? So take a moment to think about that. And what definition fits your classroom? Just some reflecting thoughts while we go through our presentation. What school definition fits for you, your school fits, and what is your classroom definition at this moment? Okay, next please. Okay, so what are the benefits of family engagement for students, families, and schools? And the next 3 slides, I'm going to go through the benefits and see if, well, I hope you agree. Okay, so benefits for students for when families and school actually are engaged with each other. They earn higher grades and test scores. They're less likely to retain in a grade level, are more apt to have accurate diagnosis of educational placement in classroom. And this one is especially important for our English language learners to be accurately placed in services and structures of curriculum that fits their language needs. Attend school regularly, like school, and adopt well to it, have better social skills, have fewer negative behavior reports, graduate and get onto post-secondary education. So our CLD students are often the broker between home and school. This is an extra responsibility and often an extra stress that they have in their school life. But if families and schools are able to engage, families feel comfortable going to schools, and schools giving families the opportunity to showcase and highlight their culture, the language as a strength, then this will lessen the burden for students, and thus they can focus more on the academic aspects of school. Next, please. So the benefits for families is to have a more positive attitude and be more satisfied with their child's school and teacher, have fewer mistaken assumptions between families and teachers, move into more leadership roles in the school setting, gain a better understanding of their child's skills, abilities, and development, and gain a better understanding of how to handle parenting issues. And for CLD's family, often have a blind trust in schools and teachers to educate their child, because often their experience in school is not the experience their child is currently experiencing school. So they don't know, sometimes don't even know what school looks like or even how to navigate the system. So how do we engage families so that we can provide a culturally and linguistically friendly environment so they feel that they're a part of the school? Because the family is a huge part of a student's life that we as educators need to see and know what that means to educate them in a way that is appropriate and effective. Next, please. So benefits for school. So greater gains in test scores, school safety increase, gain financial supports through fundraising, bond issues, etc. Gain a better understanding of community in which it serves, and foster meaningful relationship with families. So schools, we as educators, we have the responsibilities to teach the students in front of us, but we also have a responsibility to know the community in which we serve. And so if we truly know the community that we serve, we can better understand the community's lens of knowledge and use that to make learning more meaningful for students. And to foster a community that is truly a community for the students that lives in the community and the community of the school. Next, please. So relationship, it matters. So parents are more likely to be involved in their child's education if they trust their child's teacher. When teachers reach out to families, the families are more likely to be involved in their child's education in some way, resulting in strong, consistent gains in student performance in both reading and math. When school staff view and treat family and community members as assets to the process of educating students, as opposed to liabilities, positive relationship can develop. And this is a hard hurdle for a lot of CLD students and families to jump over because they're not often seen as an asset to school. But in this project, in Ms. Lopez's classroom, you will see that the foundation of her project is building relationship, a meaningful, deep relationship that changes the, I feel like can change the world.
Hello, my name is Michelle Lopez, and I am a 4th grade ELA S and ELA E teacher for Denver Public Schools. With the support of Project Tilde and the Bueno Center, I developed a family engagement project that I am very excited to share with you today. Project Recuerdo is an ongoing interactive activity in which families answer culturally and academically aligned questions in a keepsake writing journal throughout the school year. Families have written in the journal approximately every 2 months, but you can certainly assign writing tasks more or less frequently based on your specific classroom needs. Next slide, please, Maestra. Each activity consists of 3 steps. First, students ask their families a series of questions that are rooted in previous and upcoming lessons. Then, students and families write an account of the conversation in the writing journal. The question can serve as a window that allows families to see what their children are learning in the classroom. This is an opportunity to present academic content to families in a way that goes beyond traditional means of family engagement. From the comfort of their own homes, families immerse in discussion that is rooted in academically related topics. In the second step, the teacher creates a lesson based on the writing content and responds to each family with a personal message. And finally, the teacher presents the end product to the school community. Now I will go into further depth about each step. So after students and family members have a conversation, they write in the journal. When I send the questions home, I also include writing that my own son and daughter have completed in a journal of their own. So I have also participated in this project as a mother in order to provide modeled, authentic writing, as well as to build trust with families. I do encourage use of native language as an option for families. I also encourage families to incorporate visuals and memorabilia as they see fit and meaningful. And I also respond after reading every single writing response, excuse me, with a personal note. And that is also another way to build trust and to develop stronger relationships with the families. I'd like to take a moment to pause and ponder. I have this photograph here of my grandfather who shared many stories with me in his kitchen, and through those stories, I received lots of knowledge. And I would just like you to take a moment and ask yourselves, what stories do you wish you knew of your family? What family stories might you ask of your students to record in their journals? How do those stories connect with the curriculum? And take a moment and write down 2 questions that your students could ask their families. Okay, step 2. The teacher creates a lesson that is based on the writing content. Here's an example of an activity that I've sent home in October in preparation for a writing and social studies lesson based on the Day of the Dead tradition. So question 1 was, what does our family do to remember our past loved ones? And question 2, share a story about a past loved one. What was this person like? And what did you learn from this person? The lesson was to write from the perspective of the deceased family member or friend. But there will be several possibilities depending on the writing content. Other possible lessons include a comparison of Halloween and Day of the Dead, or even a comparison of the regional variations of Day of the Dead tradition. And as with all lesson planning, adaptations occur frequently depending on what students are presenting throughout the school year, and that goes with this project too. Here's another example, which happened in January. This is celebrating families. Si se puede. Question one, before I present the questions, I would like to present the window for families, which is to help them understand what is occurring in the classroom. So we have, we know, and this was presented to the families with these questions. So we know that family is a main source of happiness and inspiration. Through a biography study, we have discovered that families support us during our most challenging times. Question 1, what challenge did you face during the year 2019? What did you learn from this experience? Question 2, which is what did you learn from this experience? And the lesson itself, it was a racer paragraph, which is a constructed response with a main idea hashtag. Take another moment to pause and ponder. What topics are relevant to your families and your instruction? How could the writing content of these topics enhance your curricular lessons? The third and final step, to present the final product to the school community. So how can you do this? You can do this by creating hallway displays that inform the school community of the family's knowledge, skills, and experience, and requires that they interact with the display. And this includes all stakeholders within the school community, including the school leadership, other teachers in the building, and families, anybody that's coming through the building. And also another option is to organize informal social events with all stakeholders. Next slide, Maestra. So here's one example of a display that was created in August and September of 2019. So community members, including other teachers in the building and the families themselves, identified their place of origin, and teachers in the building were also able to identify places that they have visited as well as their family origins. And students were also comparing the location of their family's origin. And it was a wonderful experience because as the community members, the school community members went through the hallways, many people stopped and learned a lot about the families, such as that many of our students are from various parts of Mexico and Central America. And here is one more example of the display that was part of the Nuestros Antepasados activity completed in October and November of 2019. This is a community created altar, and on the altar you will see the writing responses that stemmed from the lesson itself, where students were writing as their past loved one. So they were writing in first person, identifying a specific lesson that they could share with the school community. And again, it was a wonderful experience to see how many community members stopped at this altar and read the writing content itself. And of course, that led to additional questions and stronger connections between all stakeholders. So take another moment to pause and ponder for step 3, paso 3. How could you connect families, school leaders, and the greater school community? I know especially during this global pandemic and having participated in remote learning, I was able to incorporate technology for the Nuestros Antepasados activity. Students, instead of creating a physical altar at their school, they were able to create a virtual altar. So that is just one of many examples as to how you could connect families, school leaders, and the greater school community.
Thank you, Ms. Michelle. It's wonderful work, and because of the work that we saw Ms. Michelle engage in with her families and students, we became really excited about collecting data from her classroom and other artifacts and conduct a qualitative research study. And so it is currently under peer review, fingers crossed that it gets shared and more people throughout the area and hopefully in the country can learn more about this great work. So I'm going to spend some time now sharing our research study with you. There you go. So we draw on critical and culturally sustaining conceptions of family engagement to guide this study. We use funds of knowledge, community cultural wealth, and culturally sustaining pedagogies to widen notions of family engagement practices already taking place in the home and bring them into the classroom in sustainable ways. Yoso's concept of community cultural wealth allowed us to understand the cultural capital marginalized communities possess and often goes unrecognized in dominant systems such as schools. Our research question was, in what ways were familial and cultural knowledge represented in the family journals and other classroom assignments? The study took place in a transitional bilingual 4th grade classroom, and all students identified as Latino or Latina and were identified as English language learners. While all students in the class produced journals over the course of a year in 2019-2020, we were only able to include 13 journals for analysis due to the pandemic. We also collected related student work and teaching artifacts. We conducted 2 focal groups in late spring with 7 family members. In these focal groups, we sought to elicit family members' perspectives of how Project Recuerdo impacted the relationship between the home, classroom, and school context. In the initial coding of all data, we used Yoso's conceptualization of cultural wealth to identify the prevalent forms of capital, which included familial, linguistic, aspirational, and social wealth. We applied constant comparison analysis to explain and refine more nuanced themes represented in the journals and written student artifacts. Our findings are organized by themes identified for each of the 3 journal prompts, related classroom artifacts, and student work analyzed for the study. The main themes included community history, tradition, pride, linguistic wealth, consejos, hope, and confianza. I will explain these a bit more for you. Community history. For the first prompt related to Mexican Independence Day, the main themes identified were shared community history, pride in being Mexican, and linguistic wealth in the recordings of family traditions and stories. Within the narratives, families provided rich descriptions of the various events that they participated in, such as elaborate parades, school assemblies, dances, and the historical background for the Grito de la Independencia. The written narratives also demonstrated the family's linguistic wealth, providing insight into the opportunities children from Mexican backgrounds have as participants in storytelling traditions. It was evident that many students encoded their parents' words verbatim, using descriptive language and sophisticated syntactic structures, making records of these words, which was an essential part of the project. This excerpt from a journal signals the importance of sharing Mexican history as a responsibility to ensure pride in their culture and historical background. Es muy importante para nosotros, los mexicanos, que nuestra gente conozca y no se olvide de nuestras raíces, porque es nuestra identidad lo que somos como mexicanos. Y es nuestro compromiso de enseñarles a nuestros hijos de sentirse orgulloso de ser mexicanos. The Curricular Connections, as Michelle described, developed a sense of place for the students. Students shared their journals with one another and discussed the similarities and differences between them. To develop geography skills, students identified their family's geographic origins on a map. They also learned the states in Mexico and specific language in Spanish and English to express location, including vocabulary for directionality. It's important to point out here that many times we see journals being written in the home, but that information stays either in the teacher's mind or in the family's home. This work actually brought out what was the knowledge that was in the home into the school and was tied explicitly in the classroom curriculum. The Nuestros Antepasados journal entries documented how families carry out rituals for remembering their deceased loved ones. Many entries discuss the custom of visiting the cemetery for Dia de los Muertos, or simply how the family honored their deceased relatives. What was most notable in these entries, though, was the way in which the memories of the deceased loved ones were conveyed. Families drew upon their memories and described with great specificity the personality, redeeming qualities of, and particular events with the family member. The curricular connection involved writing a letter from the perspective of the deceased loved one in Spanish literacy. Each letter included a description of the deceased family member, their connection to the child, and a consejo, or advice for living life. Consejos are valuable resources families maintain in order to persevere and maintain the memory of their loved ones. Some of the consejos shared in these letters include, es importante que disfrutas estar con tu familia, or it is important to enjoy being with your family, and es importante que trates de resolver el problema que tienes. Así que, aunque esté duro, tienes que tener perseverancia. It is important to try and resolve a problem you may have, so although it is hard, you must persevere. The altar displayed in the school's main hallway provided a space where the family's cultural and linguistic wealth were honored between families within the wider school community. The Celebrating Families prompt drew upon familial and aspirational capital within the students' immediate or extended families. While different challenges were shared, such as facing cancer or losing a pet, there was a sense of hope in confronting or overcoming these challenges in each of the entries. The sense of hope was rooted within the family unit. Even if the challenge might have affected only one person, the whole family shared the challenge, and together they demonstrated that they could overcome it. The curricular connection involved applying the racer paragraph to share these stories in English and the use of hashtags to identify the main idea or learning from the challenge. From both the journals and the curriculum products, it became evident that the families and students had a strong sense of confianza or trust with Miss Michelle, the classroom and the school community. To be able to share such vulnerabilities publicly requires thoughtful and intentional means to establish strong relationships and confianza. And this is something that Ms. Lopez was able to achieve.
As part of our study, we also can you hear me? Sorry. We also conducted 2 focus groups with families to understand their experiences with Project Recuerdo. In our analysis, we found 3 major themes in relation to how the families talked about the project. First, they emphasized that it was different than their other experiences with family engagement. Second, they viewed it as honoring their culture and language in ways that broke stereotypes about Mexican families. And third, they felt that the project created community and built confianza. In our discussions, the families repeatedly commented that Project Recuerdo was different than any other type of family engagement or involvement they had experienced in school before. It was different because it not only honored their cultural and linguistic roots, but also made space for their children and their families to learn together and learn more about their heritage. As we see in this quote, one mother says, "Nunca en ninguno de esos grados le habían hecho un diario, oído a profundizar al aprendizaje de sus raíces, de su cultura, aprender juntos con ellas sobre leyendas, sobre las tradiciones, sobre todo, muchas cosas. A mí me encantó este proyecto." The families also commented that the project highlighted the complexity and nuance of their Mexican culture and language in ways that often go unnoticed in school. The ways that Ms. Lopez posted the family's work and made it public in the school highlighted the important contributions that families make in their children's learning in ways that are often overlooked and undervalued. They also served as a positive example of how other teachers and other community members might involve families in the school community in critical and culturally sustaining ways. One mother said, "Sirvió para la escuela porque así los demás maestros miran algo diferente, como un ejemplo de cómo involucrar a las familias a la comunidad con la escuela." The families also repeatedly emphasized that the project relied on community and confianza and also built community and confianza between Ms. Lopez, the students, and their families. This confianza was built through Ms. Lopez's own vulnerability, her willingness to enact an open door policy in her classroom, and her commitment to building lasting, caring, and authentic relationships with families. In this quote here, one mother summarizes the project, emphasizing how it created a relationship with Ms. Lopez that was more than that of just a teacher. Ms. Lopez was able to achieve these deep relationships because of the journal project and the ways that it allowed her to learn about and connect with her families in authentic and sustaining ways. She explains, "Yo creo que fue un proyecto excelente porque así nosotros teníamos la confianza para ir a hablar con la maestra por cualquier cosa. porque ya teníamos esta interacción del diario, ya era como más seguido que iba al salón a hablar con la maestra. Su salón era como una puerta abierta. Uno puede llegar a la hora que quisiera y hablar con la maestra de cualquier situación. Había una relación más allá de solamente como la maestra, como que ella tiene un entendimiento más de la familia, de lo que sucede en casa, era como más personal. No sé cómo explicárselo, pero como vi algo extra, que le daba la confianza de hablar con la maestra de cualquier cosa. So why does this matter? As the family responses and the data that Sandra emphasized here, this project that Ms. Michelle was able to implement with her families is an example of how families can be engaged in critical and culturally sustaining ways in the school community. Bilingual family journals can elicit storytelling and give families the opportunity to share their heritage, celebrate their culture, and sustain their languages. The examples shared showcase the importance of bridging families' home values to give students meaningful connections to the curriculum. And family stories are a valuable resource that deepens the curriculum for students and gives diverse families the opportunity to meaningfully engage in their children's schooling. So now Michelle is going to give us some helpful hints to consider if you're going to be implementing a similar project in your own context.
Thank you, Maestra. And as we've discussed, relationships are crucial to the effectiveness of this project. So first of all, consider vulnerability. It is difficult, it is challenging, and it is also very worth it. When asking families to be vulnerable, make yourself vulnerable first. As I've mentioned, I have shared my stories first, and to serve two purposes, to offer that modeled, authentic writing to the families, but also to develop trust, and to put my own self out there so that families are comfortable with also sharing very personal information with me and with the school community. WhatsApp. This is a communication tool. It's an application. Consider this application or app as a means of establishing a strong means of communication. Messages are instantly received. Families can interact with each other through text messages, through a group thread. And many already have this application on their telephones as a personal resource. And of course, face-to-face interaction is ideal. So consider making yourself available beyond regular school hours to communicate with families and develop a more personal relationship and a stronger partnership. Also, for grade level adaptations, consider the incorporation of illustrations in combination with short sentences or phrases for younger students. A teacher at my school, who also happened to be one of my son's teachers, she tried this project as well, and she read the book Me llamo Yun, My Name is Yun. And our job, our story, was to share with our own children the origin of their names. And one way we could adapt it for younger children who are possibly, ECE, kindergarten, first grade, is to create an illustration to demonstrate or to show the story that was shared regarding the origin of the student's name. And perhaps the students, after illustrating with the support of the family, writes what their name is, or maybe they're just learning how to write their name. But this is just one example as to how you could adapt this project for younger children. And as the students get older, they could write more depending on ability levels. I've had a combination of support during the writing process from families. Many families have dictated some of the words. Other families have sat down and have read through and edited with the students. At other times, students are more independent, but definitely and ultimately, the families are involved in the writing process.
We thank you for your attention. And now we will come back and be live within the Zoom room to break out into discussion groups. We'll be right with you. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you all for being here. We were hoping that we would be able to facilitate the individual breakout groups, but there's so many more of you than we anticipated. So we're gonna go ahead and put you in breakout rooms where you will talk with your group, and we'll probably try to do no more than 5 people in a group so that you all have a chance to talk. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and let you know the questions we want you to focus on. And then Lucy, I think you might have to send people into breakout rooms. I'm not sure if I have that ability. Are you all seeing the breakout questions? So we would like you to consider in your group what stories you wish you knew of your families, your family in particular, and then what family stories might you ask of your students to record in their journals, and how might you connect those stories to the curriculum? Because what we really, oh, sorry, you're not seeing my screen, thank you.
So I can create 8 breakout rooms with 5 to 6 people in each, and as co-host, you can hop between the different breakout rooms.
Perfect. Okay, so I think you're seeing the questions now. So just consider these questions. We will, I'll put them in the chat too, and we'll come back in about 15 minutes.
So as you see that you're being invited to join a breakout room, yeah. Are people slowly moving into their breakout rooms?
I think I lost mine.
So are the breakout rooms working? Are you able to see that you are being invited to join a breakout room? I don't see people joining. Sandra? Oh, okay.
Are the people here in the main session, did you not get a breakout room?
Maybe they don't want to join. Everybody's assigned.
Okay. Okay. I can only go to room 1.
You can only go to room 1.
That's okay.
Let me see if I can make you host, pero no te encuentro. ¿Dónde está? Ah, ok, aquí está. Te mando al 2 o al que sea.
No sé quién, pues es que mejor creo que los dejo en paz porque.
No, para que escuches. Va,
Ok.
te mandé. Deena, is that okay? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I should have made you the host at the beginning.
It's okay. I was trying to jump around to every room and give them the questions. So hopefully I got to everybody.
Was you able to hop through different?
I could hop around rooms, but I couldn't do a blast. So I couldn't send the questions to like everyone at once. So
You posted it on the chat to everyone. So yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Prompts and they remember them.
Yeah. Sandra, do you want me to share my screen again or should we just chat?
Let's chat. I like seeing everyone.
Me too.
I see lots of caras hermosas.
So we're going to just take the last few minutes that we have for you to either share out what you talked about in your group or take an opportunity to ask most likely Miss Michelle some questions because she's our expert here and you have 10 minutes with her. So I would take advantage if I were you and go ahead and ask her some questions that you're wondering if you're thinking about how you might implement this project in your context or share ideas.
All yours. Preguntas.
Michelle, I was talking with Deena and really excited about the project and wondering if you would be willing to share the resources that you've created, a letter explaining it to families and those types of things, just to give us a starting point.
Absolutely, I will. I could create a folder with some Google documents if you'd like. And I'll figure out how I can do that. I'm sure there's a way.
It'd be so great. Thank you.
Michelle, it's Yolanda. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, amiga.
Sorry, I'm in class, so I'm also whispering. You can see my beautiful babies that are over there working. Just a quick question in regards, and I was in and off because I was covering the class. Was this activity in addition to curricular resources? Did it supplement something, or did you take something out of curricular resources and use this in lieu of?
It was mostly a combination of definitely use the curriculum, lots of standard-based lessons. So it was a combination, first of all, of standard-based goals, using the curriculum. And if I couldn't use the curriculum because, of the direction that I wanted to go in with the journals themselves, then I would do that. So for example, with the racer paragraph, that's very standards-based versus something that came directly from the curriculum. And I used the content, the writing content itself to create that racer paragraph that was done during an ELD lesson. So there was lots of language, lots of discussion previous to that, and that turned into a writing piece. Let's see, based on, there are some lessons that are based on literacy, and that some of those lessons themselves have come from the curriculum, and then the writing content will help me develop a more meaningful lesson. Hopefully I answered your question. If not, let me know.
Did anyone have ideas about how they might modify or implement this in their own context in a different way or age appropriate way? Maybe you don't have fourth graders.
So, Richard Johnston, I teach
Okay, I'm
Lang
going to
and
ask
Lit.
a question. Hello? I don't know if it's gonna... Hello? I think it's frozen. Okay. God. Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Hey, Angelica, hi. You can help too. Well, or make it like a book where they draw a picture of the front, maybe a self-portrait, or is there any way that you set this up so they have guidance on how to put their journal together?
Oh, that's a great question. So I give them these beautiful journals, and I've gone through Donors Choose to get this resource. And so I want them to feel like this is something very special, which is why I named it Project Recuerdo. I want this to be something that they keep forever as a memory, a memory keepsake. But another reason why, going back to the title, Project Recuerdo itself, I want families to remember their stories, and I want them to document it. So going back to the journal itself, I like to give them a quality journal, just so that it's they know and they feel, that this is a special project to honor them and their stories and their memories. But I mean, you could certainly find different journals and decorate it. Some of them do that. I've seen moms, add like little flowers and just keep it in a very special spot.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Johnston, did you have a question, sir?
I was just going to say I've implemented something similar this year, based off of National Public Radio's StoryCorps. So my 7th grade Lang and Lit students are interviewing adults in their life with questions similar to this, like what was school like for you, or what was it like when you were 11 or 12? And then they're creating a website called Sunset Stories, which is our middle school, and posting those stories, and then or posting those interviews, and then writing stories and poetry and filming short movies off of those.
Wonderful. And it just reminds me that we are always asking our students to come up with great ideas, right, to incorporate in their writing, whether it's connected to reading or whether it's a narrative piece about, something, an experience that they've had. So why not pull from for that writing content itself? Why not pull from the family's wealth of knowledge? So that's great to hear. It's really wonderful. And the incorporation of poetry is also very important, and especially in the area of arts. And Mrs. Ortega, did you have a question?
Yeah, just one more question. So thinking about the balance so I've heard you talk about the standards aspect and really honoring the cultural journey and gathering the stories. Like there has to be a balance of, if you're using it as an instructional tool, of wanting to hear the stories, honor the stories, not minimize they're being shared, but also giving students academic feedback at the same time towards standards mastery. Like how did you find that approach to, because there is some constructive feedback in regards to becoming a better writer, better storyteller, without, hurting the feelings or the emotion of this is the story that was given to me. Just wondering the balance. Does that make sense? That like when you hear stories, sometimes, it is from, not necessarily an informal register, but it's a story, and the recall of the story, either in written form or in oral form, doesn't always match the standards of the grade level. So just kind of the balance of how you honored the story with giving them academic feedback, if you could talk to that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, so the writing itself, for the most part, it was written by the students. And so these are fourth grade students. I'm sure it would vary depending on the grade level. But with the writing content, I would read it and then I would just take notes, kind of get a big picture idea of what the families were saying, maybe look for themes. Like for example, the nuestros antepasados, there were two questions. One of the questions was about the past loved one. So that was one. The other question was, how do you remember your past loved ones? And I mean, I had for that particular one, that was a knowledge set. So I had a lot of families talk about going down to Mexico and cleaning up and decorating the altars, to all the way from doing the March of Dimes to remember their loved ones. And when I did go through the journals, I noticed, well, I have different ways of honoring and remembering these loved ones. And then I also noticed that within, you know, the traditions, the Mexican traditions themselves, there were a lot of differences. And then I realized, wow, this is a lesson on comparing and contrasting. Not just, you know, Halloween and Day of the Dead tradition, but it's also a comparison of, well, how do you celebrate Day of the Dead in Yucatan versus how you would celebrate it in Chihuahua? And that's what I mean when I say standards based. And it was I mean, I could do that on my own, right? I mean, I could compare and contrast, you know, what I know myself about Day of the Dead and what I can research and what I know about Halloween. But instead, I was able to pull directly from what the families were giving to me. And it was just so much richer and so much more meaningful. And the kids just seemed, well, they were very invested and dedicated to this work. I mean, you know, even the quiet ones were over there in the corner and, you know, oh, I want to share. And, you know, it ended up being, okay, well, we don't have enough time, but oh, well, then we must make time because this is something important to you. And then to be able to find a way through not just, you know, like speaking standards, through writing standards, you know, there's just so many different ways to find, to go through reading and writing based on the content itself. And then I'm also thinking for a future upcoming activity to ask parents to speak of an injustice. So tell a story of an injustice that they experienced and tie it back to a chapter book that I'm reading during my literacy block, which involves, you know, character conflict and struggle, and that's a literacy standard. So I'm looking forward to tying those two together and creating a reading response out of it. Y maestra Doris.
I think we're gonna get kicked off, right, Lucinda, in like 1 minute?
Okay, I'll be fast.
I'm sorry, go ahead. We can have a couple more minutes. We're going into lunch, and so this account is not needed right after.
Okay.
Gracias.
Cuando haces los 3 pasos, estás hablando de los 3 pasos que hablas con tus familias, les presentas las preguntas. When you have your kids write and the families write, like how do you divide that? Like when do the families respond to the student writing, or like how do you present that to the families?
That's a great question. So I give myself some time. That's how I started, knowing that I wasn't quite sure, you know, how families would respond at the beginning. So I started off with, okay, I'm going to do this once a month. And then I realized, no, I'm going to give myself a couple of months. So I'll give them a letter with, you know, like I said, that window that gives them an idea of what we're already doing in the classroom. So we've been studying biographies, and through the biographies, we realized that family is a great source of strength. So tell a story about how your family you know, got through a difficult experience, for example. Gracias, maestra Sandra. I'll see you. Thank you, Miss Maestra Sandra. So I will give them a sheet that explains exactly what we're doing in the classroom, also the question itself, and then my example of what I've already done with my children. So I will sit down with my kids and I will go through it just, you know, as I would expect my families to. And then I have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old. So they've been through the, you know, they're able to produce this writing on their own, make a copy of their writing, make a copy of the sheet itself, discussing what we're already doing in the classroom with the question, and then I just send it home. And I give them about 3 weeks. Within those 3 weeks, I know that there may be a few who struggle to turn it in to me on time. And typically at the very beginning, families, they do feel a little bit nervous about going through, you know, writing a couple of pages in a journal and turning it into a teacher that they don't really know yet. But that's a great opportunity to build relationships. So I've been able to sit there with parents and just walk them through it. And so within those 3 weeks, I'm just going, and you know, some parents will give it back to me in a week. But if I do get to 3 weeks and I don't have a journal, then, you know, I'm calling, and I give myself basically like 3 to 4 weeks to just go through the process of assigning the activity, talking to families that may be struggling, as well as just going through the writing content itself and preparing for the lesson. So I would say it's like 4 to 6 weeks of just going through all of that, and bam, there's a lesson. But it could also be it could be less than that. It could be 3 weeks. It just depends on the time of the year itself. Did that answer the question, Maestra Doris, querida? Okay. Well, gracias a todos. Muchas gracias por sus comentarios, por su participación, su dedicación. Thank you so much. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you ever need me, please feel free to email me, and I would love to support you and your families.
Thank you, Michelle.
Maestra, gracias. Amiga Marta.
Y Lucinda, también la quería saludar a usted. Tiene mucho tiempo que no la veo.
Mucho gusto. Tu bebé ya debe estar en college.
Ay, sí, está y aquí conmigo. La debe que ver mi niña. Gusto en verla.
Igualmente, mucho gusto. Muy bonito proyecto, Michelle. Y felicidades, Deena. Yo sé que Sandra ya se fue y Khanh no pudo estar, pero maravilloso. Muchas gracias por compartir.
Gracias, Lucinda. Gracias, Miss Nancy. A todos ustedes, Miss Moore, gracias por participar. Thank you so much. Let me know what you need.
Bravo, amiguis.
Okay, nos vemos.
Nos vemos. Gracias. Thank you.
It's so good. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for your support.
Do I close?
I think so. Thank you. Thank you, Lucy.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye. Enjoy the rest of the conference.